If you've ever wondered, what did rich people serve during the Renaissance? Or what was the most popular pizza topping 500 years ago? Well, Max Miller answers all of those questions and more in his YouTube series, Tasting History. I got to sit down with Max to get the scoop on this fascinating series and learn why Parmesan ice cream is a thing. Take a look. Welcome to Beyond TV, and thank you for joining us. Tasting History has been a huge hit on YouTube. You've celebrated your 1-year anniversary.
Welcome to Tasting History. I'm your host, Max Miller.
Tell me about the show and why you think everybody's so psyched about it.
Yeah, so the show is just me making old recipes from the past, going all the way back to ancient Rome and ancient Greece and as late as the 1920s. And then I talk about the history of the food or whoever was eating them. And honestly, I'm shocked at how many people are interested in food history. Shocked in a good way, though. I think that kind of what resonates with people, I mean, obviously everybody eats. We all love food. But then in the show, I tell stories. And so the way that the history is delivered isn't like a typical history book or history class. It's done more in a story form. And I think that people like stories.
I know I do. I mean, as a storyteller myself, I can tell you everything is better if you can tell a really good story.
Queen Margherita tried the first pizza and said, "This pizza is too fatty." She tried the second pizza and said, "This pizza is too fishy." Finally, she tried the third pizza, the one with mozzarella, tomato, and basil, and she said, "This pizza is just right." And thus was born the Pizza Margherita.
When I read about your show and I started looking at clips, I was like, why didn't someone do this earlier? It seems, it seems like a perfect combination, a perfect marriage between history and food.
Yeah, I mean,
actually,
it started out really, I would bring in food to work when I was working at Disney, and I would tell my coworkers a little bit about the history of croissants or the Battenberg cake or whatever dish I was bringing in. But it was always real short, just a little minute of facts about it. But most of them thought that it was really interesting. And then finally, one of them said, you should put this up on YouTube. And that's kind of how the show came to be. And obviously now, instead of just a couple quick facts, I usually tell a 7 or 8 minute story along with the food.
Exactly. I mean, you do a lot of research for this show, right? How long does it take you to research a particular dish?
So it varies depending on how much I already know about it going in, but it can be anywhere from 10 to 30 hours of research. Some of them take me weeks to research, especially some of the dishes that I'm not that familiar with or the history that I'm not familiar with. Like if I do an episode on Chinese history or Korean history, that's not my wheelhouse. So it's a lot more research, but I actually enjoy those because it's a lot more learning for me, which is my favorite part of the process.
And what was one of the most, surprising or interesting episodes that you've done that really stands out as something you learned and you can share with the rest of us?
I think actually it's something that I just finished, and it's an episode on Parmesan ice cream from the 1700s. That's the face that I made too. I was like, Parmesan ice cream, what?
But in the 18th century, they were more adventurous with flavors than Ben, Jerry, Baskin, and Robbins combined.
Is that a thing in the 1700s?
Yeah. So in the 1700s, they flavored their ice cream with all sorts of interesting things. Now they had like vanilla and chocolate and these normal flavors, lots of fruit flavors, but they also had Parmesan cheese and avocado and rye bread and hartshorn, which is shavings from the horn of a male red deer, and it smells like ammonia. Why they ever thought that was going to be good in ice cream, I'm not exactly sure. But what's shocking is I expected the Parmesan ice cream to be abhorrent and taste like Parmesan cheese, but it was wonderful.
It's so smooth and creamy and sweet, and the Parmesan is there, but it's not. If I didn't know it was Parmesan, I don't know that I would know that it was Parmesan.
Absolutely wonderful. You get a little bit of that kind of interesting flavor from the Parmesan, but it's not too salty or funky like Parmesan can be. It's really wonderful.
Is it because of the salty and the sweet combination?
I guess so. And they used a lot more egg in their ice cream then, so you get a little bit of a flan flavor as well. So it's kind of like a cheese flavored flan. I don't know, it's wonderful.
I'm actually, my mouth is watering listening to it. I mean, at first I scrunched up my face because it sounded gross, and now you explained it and I want some.
But it works.
I might pronounce this wrong. You made a medieval dish called a cockatrice?
That's it, the cockatrice.
Word of caution, if you have a delicate constitution, consider this your warning about today's recipe.
So during medieval Europe, and actually before that, but especially during medieval Europe, it was all about presentation. It didn't really matter how the food tasted as much as what it looked like, because it was all about showing off your wealth, at least with the wealthy people, of course. And one of the things they did was they made beasts, mythical monsters out of other animals. So they would take different parts of animals and stuff them with meat and then sew them together. And that's what the cockatrice is. It's part capon, which is a castrated rooster, and part suckling pig.
Wow. Again, did not think those two things went together, but here we are.
But they don't go together. That's why I had to sew them together.
And what did it taste like? Not as...
It tasted exactly like, the back half tasted kind of like turkey, roast turkey, and the front half tasted like roast pork. And I didn't do this because I'm not terribly wealthy, but then they would gild them. So they would cover the entire animal in gold foil, which is a pain if you've ever used gold foil. But yeah, so they would make them pretty spectacular.
That sounds incredible. I mean, yeah, I guess that is a show-off dish for sure.
Showstopper.
What were there any ingredients that you couldn't come across because we just don't have them anymore?
Yeah, so there are a lot that I had trouble coming across because we don't necessarily know the translation. You know, a lot of the old like Babylonian recipes, they'll have words that we simply do not know what the word means. And so you either leave it out or you take a guess, because there are some educated guesses out there. And then there are ingredients that do not exist, at least that we know of today. Most famous is silphium, which was very common and prized in ancient Rome. We don't even know exactly what it tasted like, but it was said to have been just the most wonderful thing. They used it for all sorts of medicines and all sorts of things, but they used it in their food as well, and they ate it all. It was completely decimated, really, by the time that the Roman Empire got started.
Wow. What are your fans tell you about the show?
I mean, lots of things, lots of complimentary things. It almost gives me a swelled head every Tuesday when I release a video. But the thing that I appreciate the most is when people who don't cook are inspired to cook because of something they saw on the show. They wanted to try their hand at everlasting syllabub or something like that. That always makes me feel really good, because until 7 years ago, I didn't cook because I was intimidated by it. It seemed like too much work. So when I've been there, I've done that, you know, I didn't grow up cooking. So I remember that trepidation of, okay, I'm going to make bread. Oh my gosh, this seems like an impossible task. But of course, you know, you do it a few times and you get a little bit better, and I'm still getting better. So that's my favorite part of working on the show.
And we've all had a year of quarantine to get good at making bread. So.
Yeah, people have had time.
There you go. Max, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to look out for your book. Tasting History is on YouTube. And how often do you come out with an episode?
Every Tuesday, and sometimes more.
If you're inspired, right?
If I'm inspired and have the time, yes.
It's a great show. Thank you so much for joining us, Max. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Lauren.